I'd love to tell you about Clerks 3.
Yeah, I have not seen Clerks 3. I've seen Clerks 1 and 2. I remember, I think it was like during when like the J, because I didn't like catch it in the 90s. Actually, the first Clerks property thing I saw was the Clerks cartoon show. And I loved it. I thought it
It's
was
so good.
like really funny.
Yeah.
But like it was confusing because it was
Aired
they kept
weirdly.
changing the time slot and then it was canceled.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that was an interesting thing. And then when I saw like Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back coming out, I was like, oh, I should check out that or the original, because the early 2000s I think was a great time for
Yes.
one, films coming out, and two, rentals, because you just go to the store, you'd go to the old section, you'd find all the old stuff and you'd rent it. So Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back was coming out. It's like, I'm gonna check out Clerks. You'd rent Clerks and you'd be like, that was pretty good for, I've never seen, because like it's just a show, it's just a movie with people in it, and I enjoyed it. Wow. And so
You remember Matt Damon pointed out that that the DVD market, for as long as it lasted, really kind of enabled and funded an entirely different, like suddenly you could have hits that could never have been hits before because people
Right.
would actually buy and collect DVDs. And that was like, yeah, with the disruption of DVD, it changed the content entirely.
Yeah,
And
so
to go back in time to when I was picking up DVDs, I'd go home with a DVD frequently. That I really do think that was when cinema had a real advantage.
yeah, because there was more scrutiny in your eye because you're looking at the case, you're looking at the back, you're getting somebody, one of the employees over and like, what do you think about this? Have you seen this? And you'd like discuss it with them. I don't know. There's something about that. And
You're going to pay $20 to own it forever. In the case of buying a DVD,
Yeah. And so I have very fond memories of Clerks because it was that experience of like curating these videos yourself and finding them. And then Clerks 2 came out, and I remember, Clerks 2 was a wide release. You'd go into a theater, it was packed, people were laughing their asses off. It was just such a great experience. You can only do that with like superhero movies nowadays. If you see anything else, you're the only one in the theater.
Clerks 2 cost like $6 million and it got a wide release.
Yeah.
And of course, the DNA of the franchise is that it's low budget. My understanding, just on the topic of DVD, what Kevin Smith says is that Lionsgate, which originally, it's been around for a while and picked up Dogma, because Miramax funded Dogma and then they didn't want to release it because of the controversy, which is also really funny. Like, we don't want to piss off religious people in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
Now it is.
Imagine.
Yeah.
It's like all Hollywood now.
Yeah. Like hell bent on it. So Lionsgate put them out at the time, and Lionsgate's been kind of kicking around, and they made Red State and they made Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. And I guess Jay and Silent Bob Reboot sold extremely well on optical media. Like so well that they were like, hey, if you can bring something else to us that costs less than $10 million and we can sell this many DVDs, like, do it. We won't do a wide, obviously, we won't do a big theatrical run or anything, but if we can sell DVDs, we would really like to. And that's how Clerks 3 got funded. And so just to recap, he had been trying to get, like, he went through this whole thing around 2010 where he was making Red State and he was unhappy with a variety of things in Hollywood after Cop Out and Zack and Miri. And this is even before Weinstein fell, but he was going to quit filmmaking. He was going to finish with a movie called Hit Somebody about hockey. Then it was based on a song that he liked, and he scrapped that. He said, okay, no, Clerks 3 will be my last movie, and it'll be really dark. He kept saying it'll be really dark. It's going to be really sad, really fucking dark. And it's really going to make everybody fucking sad. He was getting like a real kick out of saying that. And, but then they had problems with procuring Jeff Anderson or securing Jeff Anderson, who didn't want to do it for some financial reasons. Like, he felt burned on the last movie, I guess. Anyway.
What is he's not an actor? What does he do in like his regular life?
I don't know, but he lives on some mountain apparently, or he lives like a fairly secluded life. And he often makes reference to, he's like, I'm not an actor. This isn't my thing. I'm not like into I auditioned as a lark when we were like college aged, for Clerks. And now I'm just stuck in this life.
Yeah. Stuck in life where He's one of the most iconic like cinema characters.
Yeah. So he agreed after Kevin had his heart attack. Kevin rewrote a version of the script where Randall has a heart attack. It's exactly more or less the same story as when Kevin did. And it inspires Randall to get off his ass and make a movie. I think, and he makes Clerks. And I think that's a really, really good premise for Clerks 2.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent premise. Like, better than anything you could come up with, probably. Especially because the whole concept of Clerks 1 is that these guys have all the time in the world. Like, they have all the time in the world. All they have to do is sit on their asses and talk about Star Wars and go nowhere. And, the fact that he has the privilege to flash forward by 30 years and be like, now these guys are getting old and might die, as a result of their bad nutrition or whatever. And by the way, Jeff Anderson looks really good. He looks kind of bloated in Clerks 2. He looks really like strong and healthy in this one.
Nice.
He looks like he's been taking good care of himself. Whereas Dante, I wouldn't say he looks bad, but he's really wearing his age in this one. Mm-hmm. Like I went back to Clerks 2 and I was like, oh wow, he looks much better in Clerks 2 than he does in Clerks 3. So we saw those early clips. They look kind of slapped together.
Yeah.
Those scenes more or less are exactly the same in the film, and they have similar problems. But I think in the fullness of the comedy, if you actually sort of watching many minutes on end, and especially if you're sitting in a crowd full of people that are kind of going for the jokes and stuff, I think ultimately it works. Not everything works as perfectly as it could, but it generally does. And he's able to use his story. Like he always told the story about when he had the heart attack, when they put in the stent and he was on fentanyl. He was singing to himself the theme song to Degrassi, The New Generation. It was whatever it takes, I know I can make it through. And so they, like, as soon as the stent goes in, they cue that music. And
oh wow,
there's a really nice opening sequence to Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. When I was a young boy, and it, like, cuts to them on the roof, like, still playing hockey. And so there's like a lot of really nice stuff. Looks decent enough most of the time.
It's always interesting, these movies that span decades, like the Linklater, like Before Sunrise and stuff like that. And they follow these characters like 30 years. It's incredible. It's interesting.
It's incredible. I think the comedy works extremely well in the whole movie. Like I talked last time about Kevin's kind of comedic sense and character sense has been declining. I think it's kind of back. It pretty much there's this one character that was in Clerks 2 named Elias. He was like a Christian kid who loved the Transformers, and he's the one who gets in a fight with Randall about Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars. A really funny scene. And he was like 20 in that one. He's like 36 in this one. And at the beginning of the movie, from this point on, spoilers. I'm just going to spoil the whole film, okay? If that's good with you, EJ.
I'm good. I'm not going to watch it till like I forget about this conversation.
He starts in the first act. Elias is the best part of the film. That I don't know what it is about that actor. He's way more tuned into the comedy. He knows how to enhance the comedy and enhance the character in a way. Is he in a lot of stuff?
I don't recognize him.
He's in barely anything. Yeah, the reason he got involved with Clerks 2 was because Jeff Anderson decided to make a movie called Now You Know. He tried his hand at directing, and he cast that guy. And then when he was in Clerks 2, he was like, "You should really have Trevor, I think the kid's name is, be in it." So he starts out. He's still Christian. He's still calling Dante Mr. Dante, and it's and Randall's still bullying him, and he's trying to tell this story about when Jesus was hanging on the cross, there were two thieves, and they said, "Jesus, we are but thieves." And Randall goes, "What are butt thieves?" And butt butt thieves keeps being like a joke throughout. It's very funny. And then when Randall has his heart attack, Elias feels as though all these years devoted to Jesus has failed him. And so he devotes his life to Satan, and he becomes a Satanist. And for the rest of the movie, every time he shows up to a scene, which is almost every scene, He is in some new outrageous Satanist getup. And I don't know if they let him run with it or what, but they are just each more hysterically funny than the last. And he knows how funny he looks, so he's able to like really kind of enhance the comedy through his performance.
That's awesome.
Jay and Silent Bob own RST Video next to the Quick Stop. It's now a dispensary. They have not gotten rid of any of the VHS tapes. They just sell weed out of there now. And I would say that they're at the height of their powers comedically. You know, Jay and Silent Bob really, you know, I like Strikes Back and Reboot was okay, but they're supporting characters. They're meant to be.
They work best as supporting characters, small doses.
Yeah. They're meant to kind of bop in and out, and they do that really well here, and it's very funny. Now, I had posed a question last time. I said, I wonder why they'll have shot in black and white, because it won't be for film. So it's that they need somebody to be the DP, and they choose Silent Bob, and Silent Bob decides that the colors in the Quick Stop are too ugly, and that if he's going to shoot it, it will be in black and white. That's their explanation. It works well enough. And there's my favorite scene in the whole movie. So they recreate many of the moments from the original Clerks, and you know, pretty expertly, because they're in that very same location, and that location has not changed much. Wow. And some of the, you know, some people look a lot older, where like you're watching it going like, am I dying? Like, cause I guess it's been 30 years. And other people, like the guy who plays Rick Darris, who's, you know, like one of Kevin Smith's childhood friends, Ernie O'Donnell. He looks like he hasn't aged a day. Like the guy looks amazing. He's a carpenter. You know, I think if you work as a carpenter, maybe you'll live
in the carpenter lifestyle.
Yeah. So there's in the original Clerks, Jay goes up to, you know, Jay has a scene where he goes smoking weed. And I guess Jason Mewes was supposed to say the line, there's a lot of fine looking women in the world, but most of them don't make you lasagna. Most of them just cheat on you. And then he couldn't get it. He was drunk during the scene, and Kevin said it instead. At Silent Bob. It's this one line. He goes, and it was that understated, you know, not, hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. He's not that guy back then. Back then he was kind of this guy who smoked all the time. It was kind of, you know, like had these dulcet tones. And so Silent Bob is like, fuck it, man, I'll do the line in the movie. And then they go, action. And he goes, yeah, man, there's a lot of fine looking women in the world. He impersonates himself back then. It's very, very funny. I'm not sure like quite how many people got it in the theater.
No, but it is funny. Like even like watching old videos of me, like I have a different like bouncy energy to myself, and like my voice is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So it's like you've subtly changed, and so it's interesting if you were looking back and impersonating yourself.
I mean, it does a great job memorializing so many of the stories you've heard over the years about the making of the original Clerks, like that Jason couldn't dance in the dance scene unless everybody removed themselves from set and stuff. You know, it just like, it's a great way to package a lot of Kevin Smith's most valuable stories, what he's brought to the world. And given that this is kind of like his victory lap after his heart attack, I think it's pretty appropriate.
Yeah.
So if you're a Clerks fan, there's a lot to love here. Now, that's the comedy. The non-comedy does not work. And Kevin has been advertising. He's like, you know, there's going to be a lot of laughs, but you know, it's going to tug at your heartstrings too. You're going to have a few tears too. Okay. So here's the huge spoilers. So please turn it off if you don't want to know. I think it's going to be streaming pretty soon. I actually don't know that. They haven't released a date, but there's rumors. In the opening, so the big question always was, what happens to Rosario Dawson? She was in Clerks 2. She was pregnant with Dante's baby. For those who don't remember, Dante was going to marry Kevin Smith's wife, the actress, the one who had a big clit. And then that was the joke in the movie. I don't know. There's a lot in that movie they wouldn't do again. Probably.
It was 2006. It's the height of like that kind of shock jock comedy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's slurs in that movie. There's stuff that just wouldn't, like, I'm surprised it even, you could sequelize it in some ways. But he instead falls in love with Rosario Dawson, and it turns out she's pregnant, and so they go off to have a life together after Randall and Dante buy the Quick Stop. In the opening 2 minutes, it's revealed through visually that Rosario Dawson, and therefore also the child she was pregnant with, died in a car crash due to a drunk driver, like on the, like right around the time of Clerks 2, like right after Clerks 2 was over. She died instantly.
Wow.
So, bummer, whatever. And I'm going like, oh, I guess they're doing the Adrian thing from Rocky Balboa, where you kind of like up the stakes a bit,
Mm.
But what we'll find is that these stakes do not need to be raised. Now you might think, oh, they're doing that because they have to write Rosario out of it because Rosario's in Star Wars now. And no, Rosario is in like 2 scenes, like pretty big scenes. Maybe they shot them on the same day. I don't know, but she's like very much in the movie.
Yeah. You could have her alive and shoot those scenes.
Yeah. So she's in one scene where he visits her grave, and she's like sitting on the grave, like kind of as a mirage. And she's talking about all of the famous people she's been having sex with in heaven, George Washington, etc. And he is now, but Brian O'Halloran as Dante is already not a great actor. I find, especially like his comedic timing and stuff, like very cartoonish, and I find him difficult to watch. I always could get through it, but in the same way you kind of forgive some of Jeff Anderson's inexperience for the novelty of the characters. But he starts like sobbing during this scene, like he like bereft about this death, and like at first you're like, is this a real performance or like, is this like a joke? But then like it turns like very real, and it's like too fucking much. It's like it's like drama level 12, and like, this is weird. So I guess we're gonna like go someplace from here. And then they're gonna shoot like a scene at the movies from Clerks 2, because there's in Randall's Clerks, called Inconvenience, the original title of Clerks, there's a donkey show scene. So they're gonna sneak into the movies and shoot it. And then like Dante gets PTSD because he's like, that's where I met Becky, and he can't go. So he gets wasted. And for some reason he starts to like resent and hate Dante kind of out of nowhere. Like they contrive a conflict out of nowhere. No, not Dante, Randall. Dante hates Randall out of nowhere. Even though Randall, like, it's very inspiring to watch Randall go from like, not having much of a life to like being inspired to make his movie. Suddenly Dante is like, you're very self-centered and self-absorbed, and it's all about you and your movie. And it kind of just comes out of nowhere. So
like you contrive the buddy split up out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, okay, let's just get through this. So then they shoot the scene from Clerks 1 where Dante is laying on the cooler, and the salsa shark scene, and Dante starts blowing the lines, and he starts screaming at Randall. Like, again, like drama level, 100. Screaming and crying and sobbing and hyperventilating. Like completely too much. And then he passes out. He has a heart attack. Now Dante's had a heart attack.
What?
Yeah. So he's rushed to the hospital, and Randall's like, oh, they're not letting us in the room. I'm going to go work on my movie. And they're like, how could you work on your movie at a time like now? And he's like, what? Yeah, I had a heart attack. He had a heart attack. He'll be fine, just like I was fine. And they're like, maybe not, Randall. And then he's suddenly inspired to run home and edit the movie as fast as he can. So he like rapid edits the whole film. And he comes back to the hospital, and now Randall's crying. And he's like, here's the movie, man. And Dante is like on a respirator, and he's like barely conscious, and they watch the movie together. And then Dante is suddenly in a dream sequence. He's in a movie theater with Rosario Dawson, and he's like, I just watched the best movie of my life. It's about us and it's about our lives. And then like before it ends, he's like, "You want to get out of here, Rosario Dawson?" She's like, "Don't you want to see how it ends?" He's like, "I trust the director." And the two of them walk away, and Dante dies. Why? I don't know. And so then there's a funeral scene after this.
No.
And
I feel like you could have maybe end that there.
he's like, normally I would quote Star Wars or something, but I'm going to quote Dante. And he now, like, Randall's crying again. And he's like, he wasn't even supposed to be here today. Yeah. This is what happens in this movie. And then, I don't know. And then, like, Elias is named his new best friend. And the movie basically ends. And I'm just left going, like, okay. Becky, here's a few different ways you could have done this. If you didn't want Rosario Dawson to be in the movie, how about, like, they own the Quick Stop together, but only Randall runs it. And Dante has been having a happy life away from the Quick Stop. And then Randall has a heart attack and Dante has to come back to town. And Randall's like, "You're the only person, like, that I can trust. Like, I want to make a movie with you." And Dante, like, has to, like, stick around, and he's kind of like, at first Dante's like, "This is the life that I wanted to leave." And then over time, he's like, "Actually, some of my best times in my life were at the Quick Stop, and I'm going to be really glad to have made a movie about it." And it can be inspiring, and it can fit with the comedy, and it can fit with the lighthearted spirit. And then for an ending, I don't know. I have one pitch for an ending. It'd be fun if, like, they sold the movie, they were able to make like a few $100,000 from it, and they were able to, like, buy the dying mall that, you know, from Mallrats. And it's like implied they're going to go on and make the entire Kevin Smith filmography or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's no reason. Becky could be just, you know, she's like, "I'll stay here while you go help him make the movie." And, like, there's no reason anybody has to die. I don't know what it adds to the film.
Yeah, it's just like too many contrived things.
It feels like he didn't figure it out. It feels like he didn't take a minute and was like, "Wait, okay, what's the movie about?" Let's make sure, like, because I've tried to read reviews where people, like, I want to get other people's takes, and they're all I've read is like, Smith explores thoughts on mortality. Like, well, we all know that you're going to die someday. We all know you could drop dead someday. The point of this film, I thought, was you could drop dead someday. You'd better do something with your one and only life. And that's Randall's.
That's really all you have to need to go with it. And yeah, it just, I don't know. And then it kind of, it feels like tropey, indie film stuff.
Yeah. Like in the way that the original Clerks, the original cut, like, had, like, Dante killed, you know, by, like, a robber, and they cut it out. They're like, "That's dumb." He got around to it. He killed, much like Han Solo eventually got killed. They eventually got Dante killed in these things. I don't know, man. Pretty disappointing stuff. But I'm dying to watch it again just to enjoy all the other parts of it, because it was really strong.
Interesting.
Otherwise.
So it doesn't ruin the whole thing for you?
I mean, it's pretty... It's an awful lot to block out. I mean, I probably will not rewatch those scenes ever again because they're just too cringe. I mean, it's really like, what is he thinking?
What is he thinking?
He fucking killed Dante.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.